So, name some of the actors who've spoken some of the lines that you've written.
Yeah, Clint Eastwood for one, William Shatner for another, Tom Skerritt for another. A lot of the big names. I still haven't worked with Robert Duvall. I'd love to. You know, he's one of the best actors out there. But Harry Dean Stanton's another one. I mean, a lot of big names have over the years. You know, I can't even remember them all off my head, the top of my head. It's so many. Still haven't worked with Burt Reynolds. He hates my writing. But not everything can be Smokey and the Bandit and Stroker Ace. But yeah, but a lot of the big names, yeah, they've Leslie Nielsen. I almost forgot him. Yeah, he's said a few of my lines over the years as a script doctor. Yeah. I always liked Leslie Nielsen, by the way. We always liked each other, just so you know.
You and Leslie?
Yeah.
You met Leslie Nielsen?
Oh, I didn't meet him, but I worked with him through other people, intermediaries. I got to talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you've had a few films produced where you came up with the idea and someone else wrote the rest of the script?
Yeah, that's happened a number of times, too. You know, basically, you know, a lot of times, you know, the thing is when I was a kid, I was told all the stories have been told already. I said, that's ridiculous. You know, and I proved it by coming up with ideas that people liked that they hadn't heard of, you know, or that was a twist on something else that had been done. Mm-hmm. You know, so I always thought that was a ridiculous idea. And people might not like my story ideas, but a lot of them are original, daring, and innovative. You know, I wrote a script called Exotic Pets. Most people hated it, but there were a few people in the business who read it, and you know, one of them said they thought it was my best work, actually. You know, and this is someone who's had over the years over 10 things produced himself. You know, so I took that as a huge compliment. But I wrote it as a cult film, and I think it was just too dark for most people's sensibilities. It was called Exotic Pets. The basic premise is space aliens are abducting potheads. It's a comedy, and they're selling them as pets to other space aliens. And in the end, they run out of food and end up eating their own pets. You know? So basically, I'm making fun of potheads. You know, in it. And a lot of people who read it, they just hated it. You know, but that's an interesting thing, though. You know, they were moved by it, even if they didn't like it. You see what I'm saying? And I think what Terry Gilliam says is true. It always stuck with me. He said, "I want people when they watch my films to either say that was a classic, that was a brilliant, I love that film, that was great, it was original, or say that was the worst piece of crap I've ever seen in my life." But I don't ever want to hear someone say, "Oh, it was okay, it was all right, it was good." Like, no, either hate it or love it. You know. Mm-hmm. And I will say this about Terry Gilliam's stuff. Most of the stuff I did love. Baron von Munchausen, I hated that thing, but I was moved by it, you know?
Yeah.
It was, I respected him as a filmmaker, you know? It's like, sorry, I hated that one, but like he said, I don't want you to say it was okay.
So did Gangs of New York and The Postman take elements of your writing?
Yeah, they did. They didn't how should I say, plagiarize, but they took story ideas that I'd written in other plays, in other pieces, and they took elements of those. And I actually talked to someone in the business, because as I was watching them, I suspected that they had borrowed from both the... I wrote a play called Welcome to Reality, and it's about this guy who grew up in a religious cult, and he has people who are trying to kill him, so he goes back to the religious cult to hide in order to avoid the people that are trying to kill him, you know, because it's hard to find him in one of these cults, and he knows that. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't believe in the cult he's in, but he knows how to play the game and get along. You see what I'm saying? So elements of that were taken into Gangs of New York, I was told. And what I had happen is you have this fighting going on between these various characters, but also in the background you have the Gulf War raging as a backdrop. And they took that same element of, they have the gangs fighting in New York City, while at the same time the Civil War is taking place as a backdrop to the fighting that's going on in the foreground as well as the background. So that was an element that they took. And in The Postman, I wrote a script called King of the Hill, not the TV show, but it was it had nothing to do with the cartoon, just so you know. But basically it was like a road warrior post-apocalypse samurai almost type of movie. Mm-hmm. And in that story, it takes place after the apocalypse, and the older people can remember the technology, and the younger people have no idea about it. So to the younger generation, hearing these stories about television and cars that traveled, and airplanes and all this other stuff, they seem almost like magicians to the younger generation, and they took that element and they weaved it into The Postman. So and it's funny because I've always been very generous with story ideas, and sharing work, and I've even said this, and I've even done this, where I've worked on science fiction for free if I like the project. I'll do it for free, if I like the project enough, and I actually have worked for free, but I've worked on some films that I'm proud of too, And in the end, it's like when you die, you lose all your money anyway. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But, maybe living a life that you're proud of, making achievements that you're proud of, maybe that's more important than money. It's interesting because Dern actually said about this. I told you the story before. I'll tell you again. But when he worked on Silent Running, he said, I made $50,000. It all went to pay off my debts. I was flat broke again at the end of it. He said, but I'd been in the best film that I ever made. I gave him the best performance. It's the best part I ever had. And he said, even though he went on to make himself a multimillionaire, and he was one of the top 10 stars in Hollywood for the 70s, and he's still, a very much in demand actor, even though he's quite old. He said, I'd do it all again for free, just to get another part as good as the character I had, Freeman Lowell in Silent Running. He said, I'd do it all again for free. So to real artists, the money is always secondary. You're doing it for your passion. You're doing it for your love.
What's the difference between melodrama, drama, and great drama?
Okay. Melodrama is like the old melodramas that they had where you had the villain who's wearing the black, and he has the cape and he has the mustache and his face might be painted green and he's all evil and the hero is all good and righteous, mm-hmm. And it's a showdown between good and evil. Mm-hmm. And I like, those cheesy old melodramas. It can be a lot of fun, but it's not great art, But then you look at drama, it's a story where the hero isn't all good and the villain isn't all bad, But one will typically be worse than the other. There'll be a lesser of two evils. And the hero will have usually some shortcoming in his personality to where he's hurting the people around him. And then he will learn to change his behavior to where he's not doing these antisocial activities that he used to do. And he'll grow as a person in the process of the story. But great drama is a story that's written on theme. Mm. And let me give you an example. One of my favorite films, Gone with the Wind. It's written on the theme of waste, wasted time, wasted lives, the waste of the Civil War. And if you think about it, Scarlett was going after Ashley, who was wrong for her, and it was a waste of her time and energy to do that. You see what I'm saying? Plus, you have the background of the waste of the war, the Civil War, and all the horrors and terrible pain and suffering, that was caused by that. I mean, so it was written on the theme of wasted time, wasted lives, and how, the wasted lives of Scarlett and Rhett, how they were doing things that were counterproductive for themselves and the world around them, as well as the Confederacy, who thought that starting this war was a good idea, when it turned out to be an absolute disaster for them. Not just the war itself, but the reparations at the end of the war, was also a rude awakening for them as well. So the pain and suffering didn't end at the end of the war. Right. It continued. And that to me is great drama, and that's what I like to write. I will do dramas. I will even do melodramas from time to time. But I like to write on theme, And I did that with Exotic Pets, where I was writing about these people who are potheads, and they think they're so cool and they're so clever, but they're really just idiots. Okay.